Thank you all for being here tonight. This may be a short night, but welcome to Story Night. So I'll ask the typical question. Anybody here for the first time? Yay! Well, you've picked a good warm-up night for this, I think. So we have 3 stories tonight at this point. So if you have a story and you've already signed up, take as long as you want. Even if it feels long, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to say, please find your ending. I'm just going to pretend that I'm still interested. Just as you will for me. So I'll be telling a story too. I'm going to figure out ways to make that puppy go long because I've practiced it a little bit, not... And I'm going to allow Diana's here with us tonight. Diana is Who Married Me. I'm telling a story she's familiar with, so you have permission to correct me if I get something wrong. Don't overdo it, please. This is Story Night. Because you've never been here before, I'll explain how this works, how this normally works. We lay out a theme. Tonight's theme is heat. Usually 5 minutes, no props, no notes, autobiographical story, the singing and poetry to a minimum. It's all about storytelling. It's as if we're sitting around a campfire and somebody says, well, I have a story about that, and they tell a story. And we all sit in rapt attention. Next month, our theme is labor. Tell your friends about this. And the month after that, we have a special thing in store for you in conjunction with Kitsap Regional Library. And we're not broadcasting live tonight, but we are recording. So that they know you appreciate them, please give a round of applause to our friends from the Kitsap Regional Library. We have been partners since early 2015. Story Night started in 2014, but they came on as partners in 2015. And I think they're the reason we're here at the Cloverleaf. Applause for our friends from the Cloverleaf. I do have some announcements from the library. Hi, Steve. Oh, no, I don't need to read that part. So last month we talked about the summer reading program. Well, as the Summer Learning 2021 comes to a close, we're gearing up for our end of summer prize pickup parties happening at several local branches. Drop by, as Sherry Lynn has done, to collect. How many hours have you read this summer? Over 300. I've read some maps that long, but maybe. Drop by to collect your well-earned summer learning prizes, including a book of choice for kids and teens and an outdoor blanket for all adult 10-hour readers. All you have to have done this summer is read for 10 hours, and you can get a blanket. Perfect for the summer. As well as a coveted 100, anybody else here a 100-hour reader this summer? Nice, applause for Ian. Oh, Barbara. We've got 3 100-hour readers. I can't raise my hand for that. For all who read 100 plus hours this summer, you get the t-shirts. Have you gone by to get yours yet? Okay, you're invited. Okay. We can't wait to celebrate with you. See, they want you to come get the shirts. If you can't make it to a pickup party, don't worry. You can also pick up prizes at every location starting August 2nd. What's today? So 3 days ago, you could start going to pick it up. Just visit krl.org/summerfinishers or see the Inspire booklet. Speaking Inspire booklet, we have several of the Inspire Light books here tonight and bookmarks. If you want a Story Night sticker, if you weren't here last month to pick one up, or if you were last month and you've got more places that you can deface by putting one of these stickers on, feel free to come by and get one. If you know somebody's paint job you want to ruin, here's a sticker that'll help you do that. Or if you just want to have this and you're proud of what your participation in this community program, feel free to come get a sticker. We'll have them over at my table there. You see this flag behind me? You may notice some signatures. How many of you were here last month and were able to sign this? Those of you who were not, at the end of the night, I'll take this down, we'll lay it over a table, and we'll have you sign it. Everybody who comes to story night, I'd love for you to sign it. It's a way to keep you connected to this community. Speaking of which, last month, I said awful things about the Etkins, the fact that they're moving away. If people would stop having grandchildren, we wouldn't lose each other the way we do. The Etkins are moving in a couple of weeks, and they've been longtime supporters of Story Night. Please give them a round of applause. They've been longtime listeners, and Mike will occasionally get up and tell a story, and he's been one of my favorite storytellers. So safe travels to you in Asheville, North Carolina. Good luck to you, and have fun with those grandkids. Again, thanks for all you've done over the last few years. In between our 3 stories, I'm going to read the other ways that people contribute to Story Night, and that is by writing anonymous notes, anonymous love letters in response to a question. And we set up tonight's theme. Jose and I were talking, I do this in conjunction with the library, and we talk about what themes we want. This time, Jose came up with some ideas, and we refined it, and we came up with heat, we came up with labor for next month, because it's Labor Day next month. And heat, I think, came out of 108 degrees here, which was shortly before we met last time. We had survived that heat wave. I want to tell you, you may remember that I said I was going on vacation, and I went to Utah, and Utah is a desert. And we weren't satisfied with just being in any part of the desert. We had to go to the absolute hottest part of the desert, down in St. George, Utah, which is the gateway to Mesquite. Anybody know Mesquite? It's just the first city in Nevada. It's a place you go to gamble if you really got an itching to gamble and you can't get it satisfied in St. George. In other words, you travel through a little part of Arizona, and then you get to Mesquite, Nevada, and then another hour and a half away, you're in Vegas. Anyway, it was hot when we were there. It was 117 degrees in St. George. It's the hottest it's ever been recorded in Utah. I will tell you, 117 there is better than 108 here. So, yeah, they are equipped with air conditioning, yes. And there is something to the dry heat thing. You know, people laugh about that, but I was less uncomfortable there. I was also on vacation and wearing shorts, so that might have contributed to it too. When did it get, tonight's question, so in between each story I read the question that I have laid out on your table. There's other slips and pens there. When did it get too hot for you to handle? The answer, when I read this question in parentheses in front of my mother and my daughter. So there's something left unanswered there. All right. Oh, when did it get too hot for you to handle? When I discovered that microwave-safe plastic pans aren't meant to be used on stove elements. Who knew? All right. When did it get too hot for you to handle? Last night. And there's a little winky face on there. Congratulations. Round of applause for whatever happened last night. So I'm not going to tell the first story tonight. It's going to be one of our other 2 regulars. And the first one I touch. There it is. Our first storyteller tonight will be Doug Avery Jr. Please give him a round of applause. I will read one more of your confessions as Doug makes his way up on stage, and then we'll welcome Doug up here. Should have a question like this when the winter, because then it would be dark, and I could say, Story Night after dark. All right. When did it get too hot for you to handle? All right, buckle your seatbelts. This is a longer one. It was homecoming weekend in our college hometown, and I ran our downtown donut shop for 10 hours without a break. So far, I'm not thrilled with this. At 3 a.m. on Saturday morning, the owner headed out and never uttered a word of thanks. On Sunday morning at 5 a.m., when my shift opened, I was 300 miles away after driving all night. I'm not sure when the first donuts came off the line. Excellent. Now I'm happy for you. Thank you. Way to rebel. Just hightail it out of there. They don't say thanks, you don't have to say goodbye. That's the rule. Please welcome Doug Avery Jr.
How's it going, everybody? It's weird. This is like my first story night in over a year, so. I also unintentionally brought a prop with me, Steve, and I'm sorry. The hair will tie into the story. So this time last year, I was actually back home in Connecticut. I had driven there myself across country because I was at a spot where in my life where I was starting to wonder and question my self-worth in a lot of places. One of those being work. And I had some things happen that I felt like it was time to kind of step away and, relax and breathe. So I took this cross-country trip back home. Now, normally when I go back home, I make it a point to go see a Red Sox game. Because as a Red Sox fan living out here, thank you, you just can't see enough Red Sox games living out here. Well, as we all know, last year baseball was pretty well delayed and, no live games, and I couldn't go take in a Red Sox game. Well, this year I flew back with my kids, and I got to take in a Red Sox game, and it ended up being way more empowering than I thought it was going to be. And that's because of work. So I've been at my job about 9 years. And I love my job. I work in food service. Been doing it for 9 years. I love my job, but it's not been without its ups and downs. When I first started, I was rising pretty quickly, honestly. I became an assistant manager within 6 months of getting hired. I became a general manager in a year and a half. I kind of felt like that rookie rising up through the minor leagues, and then they called me up to the big leagues, and I was like, yes, I'm ready for this. But then, my first couple of stores out of the gates were really awful. I was fumbling a lot. My numbers weren't all that great. I was trying to find my spot as a manager, and I started to feel like, I kind of am that minor leaguer that's batting 360, and then he gets to the pros, and he's batting 180. And it's like, well, what do you do with him, I finally took over the store, and I had gotten this new district manager who was an absolute bully. I had never met her before. Her first meeting with me, she had literally asked me when I was going to get my teeth fixed. That was pretty much the first question out of her mouth. Yeah, it was a pretty terrible experience, to be honest with you. She spent her entire time as my district manager literally telling me I wasn't going to go far. There was no building block there whatsoever. But it did kind of push me to be like, okay, well, I'm going to prove you wrong because I already know I'm pretty capable at this job. I've been doing it for a while. Now, needless to say, she's long gone from the company, and I'm still there. So that should be kind of like solid number one, right? Thank you. Now, this is about 4 years ago she left the company, and I did start building up from there. I've been a manager now about 6 years, almost 7. I got promoted into, at the time, what was kind of the 4th highest volume store in Kitsap County. And during the pandemic, it became the highest volume store in Kitsap County. So it's a pretty busy store. I've got a pretty busy team. I feel really good about where I am in my job. Like I said, I've been doing it for a long time. It took a lot of trial and error to get there, but I'm there, and I'm smashing it. So here I am. I'm taking my vacation. I'm flying back to New England. I swear I booked this before the heat wave hit. And I felt really bad because my crew was stuck working it during the entire heat wave. And I felt bad. I did do my best. I was on vacation, but we were off the charts busy the whole weekend. I was answering the phone every time they called and had a problem. I was trying to find product for them when they ran out, trying to get them fresh baked bread, trying to run my store from 3,000 miles away while they're busting their asses off during a heat wave. Before I had left, I made this kind of crude joke with them, and I had said, if you guys beat the all-time sales record for the store, I will dye the tips of my hair red. Well, spoiler alert. But here's what really happened. Here's the big brunt of the story. I'm at the Red Sox game, and it didn't really start off so hot, the game itself. The Royals hit a home run in the first inning. We answered back with a home run in the second inning, but then the Royals hit another home run in the second inning. It was crazy. Like, it was home run after home run after home run. It was 7 home runs hit that entire game. And it started with this feeling as a fan of like, crap, of course it figures. I'm going to see my first live game in like 4 years, and the Red Sox are going to lose. That's how I felt. Meanwhile, I'm at the game, and my crew back home is working the hottest day of the year. It was 108 degrees that day, Monday. It's crazy. I didn't know that every restaurant in Port Orchard pretty much shut down. But my store was still open. So everybody went there, lined to the door the whole time. I'm keeping track of sales. 2,000, 3,000, 3,200 is about our average in the store, maybe 34. So as the game's progressing and the score there is progressing, the sales in the game in my store are progressing. It's like one home run after another. Okay, my team is really literally hitting it out of the park. By the time the game is over, my Red Sox have won. I'm feeling pretty darn good. Thank you. By the time the game is over, my store has beat the single-day sales record at least. And there's still 8 hours to go in the business day almost. Yeah, it was a pretty busy day. So now I'm at the gift shop, and my brother and I are looking around for things to buy at the end of the game. And my brother bumps into this lady, and I have not paying attention at all. But he bumps into this lady. I hear the conversation in the back of my head. I hear him say, sorry. I hear her go, sorry. And then my spine tingles because I recognize the voice. And I turn around, and there I am, face to face with the manager who bullied me 4 or 5 years ago. And it took a minute to recognize, and of course in my head I'm going, there's no way this is her. Like, what are the odds that we're both, 3,000 miles away from the state of Washington at the same baseball game? What are the odds of that? And I wanted to say something to her so bad. Like, there was a big part of me that just wanted to open my mouth and be like, do you know where I am right now? Do you know what my store just did right now? Like, do you know? I said nothing to her, but she did recognize me. She kind of looked at me with a little bit of terror in her eyes, like, I know this person. Politely walked away with her family and said, let's go check out the helmets over here. I'm nervous. I'm shaking because there's I've never in a million years that I think this was going to happen. I get in the car, we're driving home. My manager, the big manager of the store calls. And he says, hey, I got to tell you something. Your crew just broke the all-time sales record for that store. Thank you. I was so happy. I was so proud. I was so thrilled. Like, in the back of my head, I'm announcing my own home run. Like, my team hit grand slam out of the park that night. And I wanted to turn around, and I wanted to go back to that gift shop, and I really wanted to just rub those sales in her face. I wanted her to know that despite what she said, I did make something of myself. I'm running the best store in the company right now. But after I took a minute and called my store to tell them the good news, one of my employees said, we only work this hard because of you. And that's what I needed. I didn't need her. I didn't need the voice of her in the back of my head, telling me I was never going to make it. I needed to know that what I was doing was working, that the people I was working with could appreciate their manager, because I never got a chance to have that. And so they hit it out of the park. And that's what I got.
Congratulations, Doug. That's a great story. Okay, when did it get too hot for you to handle? When the frosting would not stay on the cake. Raise your hand if you've ever been there. Yes, yes, yes. All right. We've got a long one here. The entire family had traveled with a Dodge van and 14-foot trailer from Los Angeles east past the Mississippi River, then north to Chicago. I was the eldest of four and was sleeping in the van while everyone else was in the trailer. On the road? Okay. All right. I've seen that. Okay. No, I have seen that, though. In Idaho, apparently, they're pretty relaxed about that. Okay. On our way back to L.A., the van overheated in the middle of the desert in Nevada. It had burst a hose miles from anywhere. Dad pulled off on the off-ramp, but where we were visible from the... Where we were visible from the freeway. Okay. It was so people could see them. It was well over 100 degrees out. Two sheriff's cars drove past, ignoring us. That's always fun. The one time you want them to stop and talk to you. Our fridge was actually an ice chest, and my parents kept knocking chips off the ice block for us to nibble on. Hours later, a woman drove by with her two sons back down the on-ramp. She went to the next town and sent a tow truck to us. The tow truck ended up pushing our other vehicle, too, while towing us. My parents had written help in crayon on the back window till the neighbors came over to see us when we returned. Wow. See, at least it makes for a great story, so applause for that. When did it get too hot for you to handle? When I sat down and he turned all the lights red. Some of you know what's happening there. I will confess that I do not, but that's fine. I don't need to know everything. Okay, one more. When did it get too hot for you to handle? When I went across the street to visit a friend and left a pot of stock on the stove. When I came home to a cloud of smoke billowing out the door and windows, the fireman said, "Lady, you lost your dinner." Like he was from the Bronx or something. Glad that's all that happened. Thank you for your contributions. We have a few more of those. In the meantime, please welcome Allison Loris.
Well, I've been trying to remember lately when I've been in really, really hot weather. What was the hottest? I remember summers in the Midwest when you probably could fry an egg on the pavement. I remember the last couple of weeks here where it's supposed to be mild and cool. But I think the very hottest I've ever been, hotter even than that August in New York where within an hour after a shower, you were covered with a gray slime that was a mixture of your sweat and the air pollution. That hotter than all of that was the road trip I took through Mexico all the way south with my brother and his two youngest kids in July. We went to beach resorts where Mexican people didn't go. We got off-season rates because they go when it's cooler. It was too hot for them. But we were there, and it was a fascinating trip. My brother's two youngest children were a 16-year-old son, who was the younger of a pair of twins. The older one had spina bifida, so he'd never really gotten his fair share of attention as a little kid. And by this time he was 16. His sister was 10, and she had been born into the last days of a failing marriage, so she hadn't really gotten a lot of attention. And since the divorce, my brother hadn't seen any of his kids as much as he'd liked. So he decided to take the two younger ones to go on a road trip. His ex-wife's parents had moved back to Mexico, to central Mexico, where they came from. And so we were going to take the kids to visit their grandparents in Zitácuaro, which is just an ordinary town, which was for me a very nice experience of Mexico, not the big tourist attractions, but just an ordinary, everyday town. But it was very, very hot the whole time, and I was not used to it. My brother had lived in Southern California since his early 20s. I had not lived anywhere south of the 47th parallel since I was a little kid. I didn't know my brother as well as I used to either. We'd been very close when we were little. We'd gone in very divergent ways when we were in our teens. And, you know, we'd never lived anywhere near each other after we'd left home. So our acquaintance had become kind of sporadic over the years. Traveling with him, I was kind of dismayed to discover that there had been a kind of autocratic tendency in his youth had solidified, first with years of his now ex-wife's patriarchal culture, and with being the father of 6 children. And he was used to issuing orders rather than inviting dialogue. And bear in mind, I'm his oldest sister. I'm not used to being bossed around. And no man that I've ever been with has thought he could get away with that for more than a second. But I put up with it for a little while because he was driving and he knew Mexico. I think I'd been to Tijuana once before this trip. So I didn't know where we were going, the best way to get there, or the best place to look for a motel or anything. So I let him do his command thing for a while. But as things got hotter and hotter and hotter, and all of our tempers began to fray, I finally had to take a stand. The first stand was about the menudo. Now, my brother really likes menudo. Apparently, for those of you who don't know, it's a very spicy soup made out of tripe, AKA cow stomach. Not everybody's cup of tea. In some parts of Mexico, it is a traditional breakfast food, perhaps because it fights hangovers. But he decided that he wanted menudo for breakfast every single day, and that we were all going to have menudo with him. And every little town we pulled into, he'd go through the mercado, saying, "Where's the menudo? Where's the menudo?" And it might not be a local specialty at all. Eventually, we'd finally find somebody that made and sold menudo. And finally, one day, I said, "Pete, I'm tired of menudo. Rick is tired of menudo. Sarah is tired of menudo. You eat menudo. We're eating something else." And we found a marvelous, marvelous pastry shop, and we loaded up on pastries, and we got some good coffee and some juice. Peter even joined us in eating pastry. He decided maybe he'd had enough menudo for a minute. But things wore on. There were times we had to turn off the AC in the truck. We were climbing really steep hills because we needed the power. And it was a big truck, and it had a full back seat behind the front seats in the cab. But it was still crowded, and tempers were getting frayed. And one day we got kind of lost. We were going around and around in circles, and my brother thought there was a hotel down the street, but there wasn't. And I piped up and said, well, let's try that direction. And he started yelling at me. And I yelled back. I said, you know what? I'm not your kid. I'm not your wife. I'm older than you, and you could just effing stop talking to me that way. And there was a bit of silence. And then he decided that he would decide to take this turn that I had recommended. But by this time, it was dusk. We were in a tiny village. I mean, a tiny village. There were no street lights. There were little pigs running around, rooting in the garbage. I mean, this was the middle of nowhere. And it's getting dark. And we finally found a place with a room to rent. The floor actually appeared to be packed dirt. The shower stall was a little higher than the floor, and the water came over the lip of the door sill and onto the dirt floor. But, you know, and there was, of course, no air conditioning. And the kids are settling down. We all had long, cold showers to cool off. And I'm just sitting there trying to calm down. And Pete says, let's go take a walk. And I thought he wanted to quarrel with me some more, but I said, yeah, okay, let's go take a walk. So we were walking around this tiny village with no lights showing at all by then, but except some starlight, because this was really the middle of nowhere and there was no air pollution whatsoever. And he started talking. He said, why do you think I asked you on this trip? And I said, well, you probably wanted me to share expenses and you probably wanted my help with the kids. He said, no, I wanted to get close to you again. I've missed you so much. And then he started crying. I had not seen him cry since he was 2. And I tell you, it simultaneously broke my heart and healed my heart to see him stepping out of his hard shell of Mr. Big Boss and admitting that he was lonely and in pain and wanted to get closer to the people he loved. And of course, I was crying too, just like I am now. Suddenly, it didn't matter that it was hot and we were in this place with a flooded dirt floor in the middle of nowhere. And we gave each other a hug that probably lasted half an hour. And the rest of the trip was just plain beautiful, no matter how hot it got.
Anybody else here had menudo? Show of hands. So, did you like it?
They used to sell it as a Campbell's soup called pepper pot in my childhood with the little tiny white cubes of fried fish.
Did you ever have that before? The pepper pot? So, you say you've had menudo. Did you like it? Okay, Lisa, you had it?
Yes, I really like it.
You really like it. Okay. Who else had it? You had it? And you.
Yeah, there was a Mexican restaurant just in the next town where I grew up, and every Sunday morning that was the thing. That you could go to Cloverleaf and have a bowl of menudo and freshly baked flour tortillas with butter, and oh my gosh, it was delicious.
Why Sunday morning? Hangovers, yes.
7 days a week, right?
No, it was on. So around LA, I'd see it on Sundays, yes.
We had it in Costa Rica and Puerto Vallarta, both in restaurants and private homes, and I didn't like it any of the time.
So I had something, I mean, they called it guatita in Chile. And I don't think they spiced it up at all. And it tasted like bad breath. So whatever they're doing to menudo in Mexico and LA and whatever, there are probably a lot of spices in there. I doubt it's the stomach lining that's curing the hangover. I think it's whatever else they're putting up to savor it up. Is it a hot pepper? But you still didn't like it. You didn't like it because of the watita or because of the You did? Okay. Every day. Yeah, okay. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Get nice and lit up on Saturday night. You got something to look forward to Sunday morning. So I may try menudo. When I was in Chile, I had a goal to never have it, and they served it up to me. They didn't tell me what it was. I tasted it, and I'm like, I bet this is watita. And later they told me that's what it was. I'm like, I knew it. I knew you guys did this to me. So. All right. So I'm going to read a few of these. Anybody else inspired to tell a story? You got one, Mike? Wait, what did you say?
I said it would be by the seat of my pants, but I'll give it a try.
Well, sometimes that's the way we like it, by the seat of your pants, Mike. All right. When did it get too hot for you to handle? When our son married his wife. See, all right, start forming a story, please, that you can tell on stage, whoever you are. Okay. I lived in a concrete block house with a metal roof in tropical Africa, 4 degrees north of the equator. It baked in the sun all day, then baked me like a pizza oven all night for 2 years. Wow. Well, you're well seasoned by now. That's pretty sweet. When it was so hot in the engine room that my metal eyeglass frames were burning my temples. Ow. Oh. All right, I think, Mike, you can follow that, right? Please welcome Mike Etkin. Again, in case you didn't hear me say this earlier, this is our last chance to hear from him, unless they come visit, which I'm sure is a possibility. Do you have family here? Oh, yeah. Okay, so they have family here. We'll see him again. But last time for a long time, again, please welcome Mike Etkin.
Well, before I tell a story, I do want to say being part of this community has been a really, really important part of our life in the last several years. We're really going to miss it. Thank you very much, Steve, for giving us this experience. Those of you all who have heard me speak before know that I've made reference to my Southern Appalachia experience, but Southern Appalachia was not where I was actually born. I was born in Ohio, but spent a major part of my childhood in New England, which is why I can relate to Doug's references to the Red Sox. Go Sox. Absolutely. But senior year of high school, I was uprooted and moved to Southwest Virginia in a college town because of my dad's career. And it was a difficult adjustment. But I got along with it, one way or another. I had the burden of being a college boy in a redneck community, surrounded by a college community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There were a lot of cultural clashes that were going on that you had to deal with every day. College, which I always refer to as the best 6 years of my life, were a mixture of being in and dropping out and working various jobs and doing whatever I had to do to get by because I was making my own way through college. There was one year when my W-2 my 1040 had 7 W-2s on it. I mean, that's the kind of, but I was always working somewhere. I drove a school bus. I did a lot of different odds and ends, some of them really good experiences. One place that I landed briefly, or maybe for a year and a half or 2 years, was a little convenience store. It was down the street from 2 small factories and a concrete plant. One of these ready mix type places where the truck drivers go out. And it was probably a time when I was out of college because I was working a lot of hours there and getting to know a lot of guys. And there were a handful of the truck drivers that were down there, 2 or 3 times a day, to buy bottle of pop and honey, whatever crap that they bought during the course of the day, chips and stuff like that. They flirted with the lady manager and all that good stuff. And I also got to know the guy who was the manager at the concrete plant. And he kind of liked me because I was kind of an outgoing, good old guy by then. And one day he said, "What are you going to be doing during the summer?" And I said, "I'm open." And he said, "Would you like to learn to drive a concrete truck?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, I was at that age where I was willing to take on just about anything. And he said, "Well, when school winds down or when it gets to the end of the school year," he said, "stop by and we'll get you all set up and you can work with us for the summer." I was ecstatic. The first Monday morning came around, and the first thing I realized was that these guys that I saw, trickling in one or two at a time during the course of the working day, first of all, they were all related. They were about 5 of them had same last name, which was Fisher, and I think 4 of them were uncles or cousins or brothers, and one of them was married to somebody's sister, and so they all knew each other real well, and they were huge NASCAR fans. So every Monday morning when we all assembled before the day started, I had to listen to these constant arguments about Petty and Yarborough and Allison and blah, 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 blah. It seemed like it was the same drivers, the 4 or 5 drivers. They were in the thick of it every week, and these guys were all into it. And then, of course, the rest of the conversation about was what was going on in their particular neighborhoods or hollers where they lived, way over in the mountains about 45 minutes away. And they didn't really take to me all that well. They kind of liked me enough when I was a clerk down at the convenience store, but to have to work with me every day, I don't know, it kind of rubbed them the wrong way, I guess. Well, unfortunately, right away at the beginning of the summer, Mr. Montgomery said, "It doesn't look like we're going to be able to work you in as a driver. We don't have the work for it right now, and it's a difficult job to take on, so I don't think that's going to work out. We're going to put you up in the batch tower." Well, the batch tower in a concrete plant is a place you have to climb up in a couple of ladders to, and it's about 30 feet off the ground, and it's where you manage these chutes that drop concrete into the trucks. And so a driver pulls up under your chute, and he says, "I need 7 yards of 5-pound mix," or whatever it was in the day, which is what was specified by whatever the application was, whether they're going to a basement or going to pour a bigger building or something like that. And the drivers would pull under there, and they'd step out in the shade while I'm up here in this batch tower accumulating the heat. We're in southwestern Virginia, where a cool day was 85, 86, 87 degrees. And as you do this job over the course of a day, the dust, concrete is actually the stuff, the glue that makes the gravel and the sand and the water stick together. It billows up from the trucks as you drop it down into that chute. And at the end of the day, every day, I tasted concrete. I had concrete up in my lungs. I had concrete coated on me. It was in my clothing. I couldn't wait to get home and take a shower and get that stuff off of me. Well, being kind of a prankster guy like I was, one way I was able to kind of discharge my unhappiness was just pranking the drivers, and it was no big deal. It was like, throwing gravel off their windshields and stuff like that. But those guys took offense very easily at stuff like that, and so, I became more and more disliked and more barely tolerated, and so on and so forth. And finally, one day, I presume as a result of several complaints, I don't know, Bob Montgomery came to me and he said, "Hey, so I'm going to give you a little break from the batch tower today." I was like, "Cool, all right." He's good, anything for a change. And he said, "Well, I'm not sure you're going to like this, but I need you to go out to the corner of the yard there where one of the trucks is laid up right now." I don't know I'm sure I'll be shocked if any of you have ever been inside of a ready-mix concrete truck. But that was my day to find out what it looked like. And my job was to go in there with a jackhammer and basically break out the concrete that accumulated in the fins of that truck. So that's how I make this connection to hot, because it was a hot enough day to start with, and I was enclosed in this big metal cylinder with all these metal fins inside of it, with very little air, other than the concrete air that was busting loose. And that was my workplace lesson for the day. And looking back on it, probably absolutely the hottest day of my life. But it didn't change me.
Another round of applause for Mike Etkin. So really, I'm surprised. Nobody else here has been in the inside of a ready-mix truck? You have been inside one?
Yeah. When I was a field engineer, it was providing me a job. I crawled in and sampled at the beginning of the batch and the end of the batch to take quality samples. So I wasn't the whole way in, but like my torso, and I did not have a jackhammer.
Wow, so two people. Now listen, if there had been a survey question, I don't know, 25 people here, how many of you have been inside a ready mix truck? I think I would have guessed 0, and we've got 2. That's how special this crowd is tonight. When did it get too hot for you to handle? Mexico in July, when we had to turn off the AC in the truck because we needed the power to get uphill. Who's been there? Not even in Mexico. I remember driving from Utah to LA and having to stop my '69 Ford Falcon because it was overheating, and we just had to let it cool off. And we were out there in the middle of the sun, and we put some coolant in there, and then we were on our way. It worked out fine. When I saw that the temperature outside at 8 o'clock in the morning as I was taking my preschooler to school was 115 degrees. This is in Bahrain. All right. Okay. Next, Netflix, 365 Days, the movie. The boat scene. If you want to know exactly when this happens, it was at 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 40 seconds. Again, that movie is 365 days, and you're looking for the boat scene at about an hour, 7 minutes in. If anybody... What's that? Well, that's when it gets hot, apparently, yeah. If you're a little cold, that might be the moment to watch. I don't know, cold in some way. All right. When did it get too hot for you to handle? When I was learning how to mix glue for a packing plant, I tripped, was about to fall down the steps with a press collar directly behind me. So I grabbed the first thing I could to stop my fall, the steam pipe for the hot glue vat. Ow. I hope this didn't go on your permanent record as in your hand. But yow, okay. All right, so. When we first moved to Kitsap County in 2002, we moved to Paulsbo, and we were in a little 2-bedroom townhouse that overlooked the water. It was beautiful. We had 2 little kids, a boy and a girl, and we started thinking after about 3 years, it's time to move on, to get something where they can have different bedrooms. And it was at the same time that we were starting to get concerned for my father. He was 75 years old, living alone in Utah, and in a very small town, and the closest relative was about 50 miles away. By relative, I mean my brother. And my brother couldn't get up there every day to take care of him, and he was getting so that, he just needed somebody to be there in case he fell, and he was falling from time to time. So we talked about ways that we could get him up here and keep an eye on him and that. There were talks about getting 2 separate houses, but eventually what worked out best and was affordable was a house with what you'd call a mother-in-law apartment, and he could walk in he wouldn't have to go up any stairs. Stairs were a real struggle for him. And he could walk into his place. He had 2 bedrooms. He only needed 1. And in fact, he often didn't need the bedroom because he spent most of his waking hours in this chair in the main room in front of the television. And quite honestly, he spent a lot of his sleeping hours in that chair in front of the television. And we would go down, we'd help him get his meals and make sure everything was taken care of in the house. And we had the upstairs. It was 3 bedrooms, so our kids each had their own bedroom. My dad had a dog named Buffy, who was lots of energy. A lab beagle mix, I think was what it was. Lots of energy. She was a kind of dog that you throw the ball and she would pass out before she would stop wanting you to do that, so you'd have to tell her not to do that. Our pet was a little frog named Harry. It was in a little tiny aquarium, little tiny frog named Harry by our oldest, who was into Harry Potter. And so that was our family for a while, and we had Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving happened probably about a month after we had all settled in. We had also helped Diana's brother move up as well from Utah. And so there'd been a lot of moving over several months, and we all got together, and at Thanksgiving it was really emotional. It was really neat to have all of us together and giving thanks. My dad kind of was drawn to tears about this. He didn't cry much, and you could tell that he was really moved by how his life had changed. He was really happy here. And then the wind blew. A few weeks later, I think it was a few weeks later. Remember, I gave you permission to change my story. I'm telling it the way I remember it. You can correct me later. And I'm sure there will be corrections needed, but the gist of the story is the same. One day I came home from work, and I was feeling sick. And the wind was blowing outside pretty hard. And I was feeling sick to my stomach. And I went into the house, and I went into our bedroom and into the master bathroom. And I could tell that for a day or two, stuff was going to be exiting me from different exit portals. And I was seated, and I was miserable. Stuff was fine, and it went dark in the bathroom. The wind had been blowing outside. We'd been warned that there could be a power outage. And I hoped that it was local. I hoped that it was just something, branch hit a line. There's lots of power lines. This was between Illahee and Brownsville, a little neighborhood called University Point, and we lived at the end of a cul-de-sac. Probably 6 or 7 houses on our street. And it was dark. I got things taken care of. I got up, went outside, and it was still dark everywhere else. Looked across the street. There were no lights on. Street lights were out. I'm like, okay, we're in a power outage. And so we got prepared for it. I was sick, so I didn't feel like I could do a lot. So one of the people who helped us was our neighbor, our next-door neighbor, Craig. He knew how to do everything. And we had a generator that had been left behind by a former neighbor, or by the former owner of the house. And Craig helped us get it set up, but it wasn't, the former resident had done something to this generator to make it so that it couldn't be hooked up the way it normally was supposed to be hooked up. But Craig figured it out. And so we were able to get little portable heater units, right? Those were working at first. Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming that. I'm in bed, and this generator is downstairs, out our window, down below the deck, and I don't remember why we had that window open, but the carbon monoxide detector eventually went off, and so I get taken to the hospital. There was nothing wrong with me. They couldn't find anything wrong. I just rested a little bit, went back home, but no more generator, which means no more little heaters. Our next door neighbor, Craig, had lived for a year in the South Pole and for a month in the North Pole. So he had plenty of gear left over from those trips, and so he helped us get our dad ready because Diana and the kids, at least, and I can't remember if I went too, but Diana and the kids were able to go to her brother's house. They lived in an apartment in Silverdale. Silverdale was just hunky-dory a day later. The power had come back on. Here's the thing. If you're in a power outage, the best strategy is to be in a power outage that's affecting about 1,000 or 2,000 other people. If it's only affecting 8, you're low down on the list. That's the way it works. You all know this. So Diana and the kids went to David's. They were able to stay there. I believe I stayed back home with my dad. I was feeling better, I think. I don't remember for sure, but I know that Our next door neighbor gave us some gear so that my dad could have warm clothes. I mean, these boots were incredible. And, but we got home the next day. We went home to see how Dad was doing, and he was pissed. And he vented his anger at Puget Sound Energy like you would not believe. And he could not be given any logic about the hard work they were doing and about how they're working around the clock and there are power outages that are getting cleared up. Ours isn't yet. And to make it worse, we could see the houses behind us had power again, the yard behind us. So there had been the way this worked is there was a tree just down the street from us that the limb had fallen on the wire and it had affected the 6 houses on this cul-de-sac. So we were low priority. But he was so mad. I don't think, there have been few times I've ever seen him that angry. I think there's few times Diana ever saw him that angry. I don't think maybe that was the angriest you ever saw him. I don't know. But he just would not be consoled about this, about how, I mean, and he was okay. I mean, I could understand why he was upset. And so what we did is we found somebody where he could go with his dog. I went with him, and we stayed in the basement of their house. They had it was somebody in our church. We called him, and they said, we just need a place where we can stay. And he said, well, you can stay in our house. And so we went, and we stayed there. And then we got that wonderful call that the power was back, and we were able to go home. We were all able to go home. My dad's mood lifted right away as soon as we got into the other place. He was fine. He just needed to be warm and not bundled up. And I don't remember if we had a TV, but that probably helped too, if there was one. So we all piled back to the house, and everyone was fine. The kids were fine. There was one casualty. We had forgotten about Harry. Harry froze to death in that. There used to be a way that sometimes he'd be hiding. I think we'd tap on the glass and he'd come up and things like that. And you tapped on the glass. There was no emotion. We had neglected our frog, our little frog. In years, so this is a story not so much about heat, but about the absence of it, except for the heat that was coming from my father. And as I was thinking about this story, I was realizing he wasn't really mad at Puget Sound Energy. He was probably mad at me, but he couldn't say that. He couldn't say that he was angry at us. He was angry at being cold, and he wasn't going to take it out on me, but he could take it out on somebody who could never hear him. Now, he was a cop. He knew about people making irrational complaints about police officers. I was a journalist, and now I work in elections. I know about people making irrational complaints about people doing their job and everything like that. And it dawned on me that really he was just upset about how cold he was and how uncomfortable he was. And Puget Sound Energy was the one who kind of took the heat, except that we never deflected it and let them know about it. So that's all I got, basically. That's my story about heat tonight. And look, it's 8:30. This is about when we normally leave. So I want to thank our 3 storytellers tonight. By the way, you have first crack. The library has given us books to give out. When I say the library, I mean Jose and Priya. And Lisa, you can take credit for this too, I'm sure. They've given us books to give out. The storytellers get first crack at them. I'll lay them out. I'm going to take this flag down, and if you haven't had an opportunity to sign this, I'll bring some pens over and have you sign that. I'll bring some stickers. We'll be back here on September 2nd. I say we'll be back here. I'm operating on faith from this point forward that we can just keep continuing this on one way or another. So we'll see you next month. Come sign the flag if you haven't before. Come get a sticker. If you already have stickers, come get another one. Like I say, deface whatever you want to with it. Thank you. We look forward to hearing your story.